Hello friends, I am CAAT Rafiq. I am delighted to welcome you to this Google Hangout session where we will provide you an overview of CAATs. We have divided this presentation into two segments. In the first segment, I will give a quick overview of what is CAATs. After this, we will also have a quick walkthrough of some of the key features in the CAAT software which is being taught in the CA Institute, and then it will be open for question and answers. You can ask your questions whenever you want, but I'll choose to respond depending on the number of questions which are available. So let's get started. You are aware that we have 100 hours of IT training in the advanced ITT course, and CAATs is for a duration of 10 hours. I had the opportunity to be a part of this, developing this study material and also reviewing this, so I can definitely share you some insights. Being a chartered accountant, I have used CAAT software for a period of more than 30 years, right from the day I joined the profession. Before I get started in terms of the presentation, let's have the official disclaimers. I'm sure most of you are aware of this. This is the brief session agenda. First, we'll understand what is CAAT, why is CAATs required, and when are CAATs to be used. Second, we'll get to know how CAATs can be used, what are the steps and the approach for using CAATs. Third, we'll look at the key features and examples of CAAT software. Any CAAT software, if you have to understand, it may take about 30 to 50 hours. But for the purpose of the material, there are about 20 key functions which have been covered, and my focus would be to pick up 8 or 10 key functions, give you a demonstration of how these functions work, and also the perspective from which these have to be used. We'll also have a demo followed with the QA. First of all, you should know what is CAATs. CAATs refer to computer assisted audit techniques or computer aided audit techniques. In this session, you should be able to get a clear perspective of what is CAAT, why CAATs are required, and when are CAATs are to be used. We'll also get a quick overview of how CAATs could be used, who are the users of CAAT. Although CAAT refers to computer assisted audit techniques, CAATs can be used by the management. CAATs can also be used for forensic or fraud investigation. We'll also look at some case studies where we will have a quick walkthrough of specific situations where CAATs could be used. Now, if you look at this image, what you see is a Swiss knife. CAATs are similar to this. There are different or multiple features and functionalities. As an auditor, you should be able to choose the specific component of the Swiss knife and use it as required. What the CAAT course gives you is a synopsis of the features of a Swiss knife. So you should be able to use what is required depending on the situation. You'll also see one more image where we have a gentleman pouring with a lot of data. CAATs primarily deal with data analytics. You have to analyze data which is in electronic form. Let's first get to the first part of the presentation. What is CAATs? CAATs are spelled differently. One is, as you see, CAATs. The other one, which is more popular, is CAPTS, Computer Assisted Audit Tools and Techniques. And this probably is a much better definition because you are learning not only the tools, but what is also important is the techniques of how to use these tools. CAATs are also referred to as data analytics tools. Quite often, CAATs are used as a data analytic tool. If you search on Google for data analytics, probably you'll find more hits compared to hits on CAATs. So it's very important for you to remember that CAATs are primary tools for data analytics. The key distinction, if I have to summarize in one sentence of what CAATs can do or what data analysis or data analytics can do, is the CAAT software is designed with the ease of use of Excel. So most of you would be familiar with Excel, and you know, if you have to use Excel, you need to know where to click and how to click. Similarly, if you know how to use audit software, what you need to know is how to select and how to click next till you reach the OK button where you will get the result. What is most important is not what the result you get, but how you analyze the result. There is a question whether data analytics is an art or a science. Data is science because the processing of data is done by the computers, and computers process data in a systematic and scientific way, whereas the analysis which is done by the chartered accountant or by the user is an art, because depending on the need of the situation, you should know how to analyze the data. If you have to summarize data analysis tools in one sentence, you can say they have the ease of use of Excel but the power of database. These are also referred to as general audit software. These are analytical tools which are designed specifically for auditors. You might have come across courses which talk about how to use Excel for audit. Even Excel is an excellent tool for doing audit, but this is not designed for audit. When I give a demo of the CAAT software, or if you already use the CAAT software which is installed in the ITD centers, you would have seen that the CAAT software has specific functions which are not there in Excel. But it is possible that you can do the similar functions in Excel, but you may have to go through 3 or 4 steps or multiple steps to be able to get the result. Whereas you can get the same result by just clicking a few buttons in audit software. Plus, there are a lot of specific features which are developed and designed primarily from the audit perspective. Another important factor you need to consider, especially when you're using CAAT, is that CAATs is a concept. It doesn't refer to any specific software. What I'm trying to give you in this particular presentation is the perspective of what is CAAT. When you have to teach how to use a CAAT software, it's important that you have this perspective in mind that CAAT refers to computer assisted audit techniques or computer aided audit tools. So it's important you should know that the auditor is the one who does the analysis and he's using the computer as a tool. The computer software is only used as an aid to audit. Let's look at some of the key features or functional capabilities of a CAAT software. The first capability is file access. As an auditor, you could be auditing multiple environments. It's important that you should be able to access files from multiple information systems environment. The applications which are used by the organization could be of different types. It could range from a company which is using Tally, or it could be a company which is using in-house software, or they are using a high-end ERP software. As an auditor, when you want to use CAAT, it's important that you should be able to access this data. How to do that, I'll discuss this a little later. You should also be able to reorganize the files as required. What does reorganize means? Depending on the need of the audit, depending on the audit objectives, you should be able to sort the data, you should be able to merge, extract, and link the data with another file. You should also be able to select or extract the data depending on specific conditions. For example, if you're doing a tax audit, you'd like to identify all payments towards deposits about 20,000 rupees. So if you've got the data pertaining to all the deposits, you should be able to filter and pick up this information through one single command in audit software. In addition to this, audit software or CAAT software also has certain statistical functions which enable you to do sampling, stratification, and frequency analysis. I'll discuss this in detail when I give the demo. You also have arithmetical functions which enables you to perform various arithmetical functions in terms of recomputation. Let's look at some of the examples of CAAT software, the prominent software which are used. The first one is called as IDEA. Sorry, first one is ACL. ACL stands for Audit Command Language. Next one is IDEA, which stands for Interactive Data Extraction and Analysis. Third one is Arbutus. Then you have SoftCAT, WebCAT, Active Data, TopCAT. Like this, there are multiple software. But if you look at the software, these are a handful only. CAAT, as I said, doesn't refer to any specific software. It could also be referring to SQL, which means you can query and pick up the information based on what you want. That's also referred to as CAATs. Next, you can also use a reporting or query features in the audit software. Why are CAATs becoming important? You all are aware that we're now living in the digital age. Any data which you want to access is available electronically. Now, there's a famous quote of Bill Gates who said business is going to change more in the next 10 years than it has in the last 50 years. And in fact, business is being done at the speed of thought. So we talk about a digital nervous system. Every element of data is available electronically. So the people who need to be involved in the organization, who need to work in the organization, are called as knowledge workers. You can provide value addition if you're a knowledge worker. Now, as I said, if you remember the first part of the discussion, data analysis or data analytics is both an art and a science. So the data is the scientific part of it. The computer can provide the data which you want. For example, if you're doing an aging analysis, the computer can extract and give the information pertaining to the aging in terms of what are the data which is pertaining to specific periods. But it's for the auditor to analyze and come to a conclusion. For example, you found there is obsolete inventory which has been lying for more than 1 year. By doing the aging function, you can get this information. But what do you do further? When you do further analysis, you find that this data which was available, this inventory which is available, again they are placed in order. Then you know there is an issue. So this is where when you use data analysis software, you don't stop at one step, you do further analysis as required. Now, what are the key skill requirements of the E era? Now, if you just have a quick look at this, now this is the survey which is done of the global chief audit executives. You find at the topmost is the analytical or critical thinking. And next is the communication skills. You also have data mining analysis. So what is most important is to remember is the computer is only a tool. You should know how to access, extract, and analyze the data. And that's why they say in the modern world, 80% of the internet to do is related to technology. So if you have to access the data which are available, the controls which are available in the technology, you should know how to access this data which is in an electronic form. What are the impact of CAATs on auditors? I'd like to just focus on the last part, that it is possible that what could take 20 hours or 20 days can be done possibly in 20 minutes if you know what is the data you're looking for and how to analyze. So that's why it becomes very critical for auditors to become proficient in CAATs so that you can do data analysis. I'll share practical examples a little later in my presentation. Now, this is one slide I thought I'll just share with you, which I recently saw on Google. The US Air Force uses data analytics, and one of the auditors is claiming that they were able to find more than $1.4 billion by using data analytics software. Now, if you look at these features, what he's talking about, you're able to identify areas of error and waste. You can do root cause analysis and find out what could be remedial control measures which need to be taken. You can also verify and confirm the compliance which need to be in place, and thus you can provide a better assurance. You need to create a paradigm shift in your thinking when you want to do data analytics. It's not about accessing data which is available in records, files, and registers. This is about accessing data which is available in an electronic form. So you should know where the data resides, what is the format in which it resides, and you should know how to access. Once you access the data, you should be able to bring this data into the data analytics software, analyze the data as per the audit objectives, and be able to come to your conclusions. Overall, you find the audit software enhances the productivity and helps you to do more with less time. When to use CAAT? Let's answer the third part of the question. The simple answer is any electronic information that has to be audited, that is auditable, is a potential candidate for applying CAATs, which means any data which is available in electronic form, you can apply CAATs. You can use the concept of CAATs. What is most important in using CAATs is to remember two words. Primarily, CAATs refer to data analytics. What is data analytics? If I have to give two terms for data analytics, it is inferring insights. When you're using CAATs, what you're doing is you are digging deeper into the data and inferring insights. With the type of technologies available, you find most of the clients have automated their operations. But with the type of CAATs which are available, we can now analyze large volumes of data and then come to insights and confirm whether compliance are being done as per the requirements. Now let's look at the second part of the presentation. How do you use CAATs? What are the steps and what are the approach? I'll quickly walk through this because I'd like to focus more on the practical aspects. Now these are the basic steps regardless of what CAAT you're using. First, you need to develop a plan for analyzing the data. The first question you need to ask is, what do you want to accomplish? What are the specific objectives? Whether it's a tax audit, whether it's an internal audit, whether it's a company audit, what will be the audit objectives? That has to be clear. Based on the audit objectives, you'll also decide what are the controls you want to verify. Next, you'll define the period of time which is given in terms of the when, which is the period for which the data is going to be analyzed. Third, you look at where. This is where you find out what are the source of the data and how this data could be available to you. For example, what is the area of your audit? What is the focus? Is it accounts payable? Is it payroll? Is it receivable? Is it general ledger? You need to be very clear about that. And next, you should be clear about why are you performing this analysis. Once you're clear about this, then you will be able to know how to do the CAATs. If you have to summarize this presentation, these are the 5 steps in using CAATs. First, you have a problem to analyze. You get or process the data, perform the test. Based on that, you analyze the result, measure the insights, and apply the learning. For example, if I'm doing tax audit of a particular client, tax audit requires that I have to comply with the requirements of the tax. There is a specific set of questions or information which you need to analyze. So I get the data pertaining to the organization, process the data, perform the test. Based on that, I come to conclusion whether all the queries which are required for the purpose of tax audit, I've got the information, I analyze the information. Based on that, I identified what are the findings or areas of non-compliance, and then based on that, I decide how the report is to be prepared. You also find many of the data analytics or the CAATs have also been included commonly used software. For example, Tally has a separate auditor version which also provides you information where you can extract as required for the purpose of tax audit. When you want to do data analytics or use CAATs, the most important thing is to understand the IT environment, the applications which are being used, and the data. So if you see here, we need to understand the IT resources in terms of the facilities, the technologies, the applications that are being used, and most important for the auditor is the data. The applications could be of multiple types. It could be developed in-house, this could be standard, or it could be complex, or it could be simple standalone. What is also another important dimension you need to consider is what is the database, whether it's flat files or the proprietary files. For example, in the case of Tally, the data is not available in the form of a database. So in that, it's a proprietary database. But Tally has got a feature whereby you can export to Excel or in a flat file. So you have to export the data in a flat file, then you import the data to a data analysis software and do the analysis. So at the end of understanding the IT environment, what is important is you should know what is the information architecture of the enterprise. So if I'm doing a tax audit in a manual environment, probably I'll spend about, let's say, 30 man days for the audit, out of which I may not spend too much time on understanding the business process because I'm already aware of the business process. Whereas if I'm doing the same audit, tax audit, in the case of an IT environment, I'll spend 2 or 3 days to get an idea about what the type of IT which is being used, what are the applications, what format data is available. Then probably the same audit I can do in another 8 days. Okay, this gives you a snapshot of how CAATs could be used. You have your laptop which has got the audit software, and this audit software can accept data in certain specific formats. The data which is being used by the clients could be in high-end ERP systems such as SAP, or it could be in-house software, or it could be an application called Tally. Whatever be the format, you convert into a commonly accepted file format. import into your data analysis software, and then do the analysis. Who can use CAATs? You remember the question which I asked you? CAATs need not be used by only the auditors. They can be used by fraud investigators. They can also be used by management. Let's look at the third part of the presentation, where we'll look at some examples and key features. This presentation will be made available to you, and if required, we can have a detailed discussion a little later, but I would like to just run through this presentation to give you an overview. So as an auditor, the most critical part is to obtain sufficient evidence for performing the audit procedures as per the audit objectives. Audit, they say, is all about asking intelligent questions. Based on the audit objectives, you should be able to collect and evaluate evidence. This audit evidence is available in a computerized environment in an electronic format. So it becomes critically important for the auditors to know what is the data, what format the data is available, how can I get this data into the CAAT software and do the analysis as per my audit objectives. Now if you look at the assertions, any audit fundamentally is all about certain assertions. There is a representation by the management or as per the requirement of the regulators. Let's say if you look at a financial audit, you are looking at these 5 key assertions: the existence or occurrence, completeness, rights and obligations, valuation, presentation, disclosure. Let's have a quick overview of this. So when I'm looking at the assertion pertaining to existence and occurrence, I'm checking whether the account balance exists and the transactions have been recorded and disclosed and pertain to the entity. I'll discuss this later when I come to specific examples. Next, when I'm looking at completeness check, what I want to verify and validate is whether all the account balances, transactions, and the disclosures have been recorded, which should have been ideally recorded, and these are reflected in the financial statements. When I'm looking at rights and obligations, I want to ensure that all the assets which are reflected in the balance sheet or the final accounts are in the control of the entity or the enterprise, and the liabilities or the obligations of the entity. When I'm considering valuation, allocation, and accuracy, I'm looking at whether all the account balances, transactions, and the disclosures which are recorded are fair and appropriate, and these have been correctly and completely recorded. When looking at presentation and disclosure, these are the 5 key aspects I'll be looking at. I'm looking at whether all the transactions which are reflected are correct and complete. From the point of understandability, they have been classified as per the legal requirement. The rights and obligations have been correctly reflected. The valuation of the assets is as per the norms, as per the regulatory requirements, or as per the business requirements, and this data is accurate. Let's say I'm doing audit of an application software. Let's say a business entity who is doing trading, or a bank who is doing financial transactions. So the first thing, if I'm doing a financial audit, let's say a balance sheet audit of a bank, first thing I want to be sure whether the transactions which are processed by the bank are complete in all aspects. Next, I'm looking at accuracy, whether all the transactions have been processed by the information systems accurately. Third, I want to be sure whether all the transactions are valid and all the valid transactions have been processed. I would also like to confirm whether the organizational structure which establishes the hierarchy and the rights and responsibility of the employees in terms of the authorizations, in terms of who can perform what duty, these have been inbuilt into the IT and these have been complied with. I would also be looking at segregation of duties, whether the employees are accessing this information, they are accessing the information based in terms of what has been actually granted. So if I'm doing an application audit, if I'm accessing this particular data, these are the key aspects I would keep as the control objectives. Based on this, I'll do the audit. A little later, I'll show you specific examples of this. Now just remember, when you're doing data analysis through audit software, it's important to establish the audit objectives. One of the fundamental principles is the audit objectives and scope does not change whether it's a manual or a computerized environment. What has to change is the methodology. What has to change is the way, the techniques which are used for doing the audit. And that's why they say you have to evolve the methodology in tune with the changing technology. Now let's come to the fundamentals of what is CAAT all about. Let's have a quick look at the key features of CAAT. One of the most important features of a CAAT software is stratification. Now, stratification is segregating the data into different buckets based on a particular category. For example, if I'm doing stratification of inventory based on the value, I would like to pick up stratification in terms of what are the inventory which is from 0 to 10,000, 10,000 to 50,000, 50,000 to 1 lakh, or 1 lakh to 5 lakh. So based on the stratification analysis, I'll be able to get what is the count, what is the percentage, and what is the total value. So this will help me to identify abnormal strata. The second key function is called classification. Classification involves putting information into separate buckets. For example, if you look at the statement of account, what we have done in the statement of account is we have classified the accounts as per the name of the party. For example, if you look at the revenue accounts, when you say classify, what we are doing is we are classifying the accounts as per the nature of the revenue account. For example, all transactions pertaining to rent are classified under rent. After posting, they come under rent. All expenses pertaining to salary come under salary. All expenses pertaining to travel expenses come under travel expenses. So in CAAT software, it is possible that you can extract or you can get all the transactions pertaining to financial aspects, covering the financial transactions, and you can classify based on the account head. When you do the classification as per the account head, the result you get is nothing but the general ledger or the trial balance, and you can drill down and get this information. Third one is summarization. Summarization you're doing on a particular field. For example, I would like to summarize the transactions as per the account head or as per the customer ID. Based on this, I can pick up all transactions and get a summary of the transaction as per the transaction ID or the product ID or the customer ID. Now you find there's a little similarity between stratify, classify, and summarize, but there's also certain differences. Stratification is generally done on a numeric field. Classification is done on a character field, and summarize is also done on numeric field. You also have another function in the CAAT software, which is called as outliers. Outliers is we find out difference, we identify items which are beyond a particular range. For example, you want to find out items which are 2 or 3 times the standard deviation, or 2 or 3 times of the average. So this helps you to identify all the abnormal transactions which are beyond that range. Benford law is another important law which is most often used in the case of CAAT. I'll discuss this with the demo a little later. We also have trend analysis which can be performed. You're all aware of what is trend analysis. Looking at a particular pattern, you can know how the trend is, and based on this you can draw insights. You have a gap test where you can identify gaps in a sequence. For example, all the transactions should follow a particular sequence. Doing a gap test, you can identify specifically what are the gap in the invoice numbers or the transactions or the customer ID. Duplicate test, as the name indicates, identifies the duplicates. Now you can do a duplicate test or even in Excel, but it will take you 2 or 3 steps. In the case of a CAAT software, you find duplicate test provides you the details and also the summary. You can just run the duplicate test on the specific field. For example, if I'm doing audit of inventory and I've got the invoice numbers, I can do a duplicate test on the invoice numbers and then pick up all the information pertaining to invoices which are duplicates. You can also find duplicate customers, duplicate employees. Like that, you can perform duplicate tests for various functions. You also have relation where you relate 2 files, and based on that you extract the information. For example, you have the payroll master where you have the payroll which has been paid, and you have the employee master which has the employee details. You can relate both of these and then find out, are there any salary which has been paid to employees who are not in the employee master. You can also do a compare between 2 files. For example, you got the trial balance of the closing trial balance as on 31st March 2015, and you have the opening trial balance as on 1st April 2015. You can compare and find out if the tally or there are any differences. Now let's say if you're auditing the sales cycle, now this is how you would establish the control objectives. Now what is most important when you're using CAAT software is to understand the business process. There are 2 key things you need to understand when you're using CAAT. One is the business process, second is the data or the information, in what format and where it's available. Now it's important you need to understand the business process of the workflow. For example, if you're auditing sales, you need to know how the orders are processed and whether these orders are processed within the approved customer limits. What is the assertion you're looking at? You're looking at valuation. Next, you're looking at orders approved by management as to prices in the terms of sale. You can also look at orders and cancellation orders and whether these have been input correctly. So like that, you formulate first the hypothesis in terms of what are the controls you need to evaluate. You apply these controls on the data, and then based on that, you come to conclusion. Now let's have a quick walkthrough of the features of an audit software. Now these are the key features. Any audit software, let's say I told you about ACL or IDEA or TopCAT or Active Data or SoftCAT or ECAT. There are multiple types of software. If you Google, you'll be able to get an idea about what are the software which are available for the purpose of audit. As I said, audit software also refers to general audit software. This not be a specific software which is designed for audit. If you're using a reporting or a query feature which is available in Tally or in a banking software, that's also called as CAAT. Now some of the key features of an audit software, I've given this alphabetically, and I'll be showing a demo of some of the software. For example, aging, I've already discussed. Analytical tool is similar to what we have in Excel, where you have specific functions where you can get information pertaining to specific aspects. For example, you want to trim the data, you want to remove some spaces, or you find out transactions which have happened on a weekday or Sunday. Benford law, I'll give the examples. Duplicate tests, I've already explained. You also have option to export the data, which means whatever audit analysis you've done, you can export to a known format. For example, you'd like to export the data in a HTML file or Excel file, any format you want, you should be able to export. You can extract information or data depending on your requirement. For example, you're doing analysis from the perspective of tax. You'd like to pick up all transactions pertaining to cash receipts or payments above 20,000 rupees. Or you'd like to pick up all expenses above 10,000 rupees which have been paid in cash. You can extract this specific information. You can also find specific information. You can do classification, as I said earlier. You can also join the data. When you join means you can combine two files, like I said, the employee master and the payroll master. You can also append the files. You can also do recomputation. For example, the TDS has been already computed. You'd like to recompute and verify whether this computation has been done. Or let's say VAT has been computed. You will extract the data and then you recompute the VAT to check whether the VAT which has been computed in the software is correct. You can also do sequence check, sort, statistics, etc. So let's look at some case studies before I go to the demo. Let's say if you're doing a financial audit. So what are the key aspects you'll be looking at in financial audit? So you want to check whether all the vouchers are properly authorized. You want to check whether discount policy has been complied. You want to check whether the tax rates which have been applied are complied with. You also want to do aging of debtors. All this can be done using CAATs if you get the data. If you're doing an internal audit, now this gives you a list of what are the functions you can perform. Similarly, if you're doing a tax audit, I've already given this example. What are the types? These are only examples of what you can do when you're using CAATs. If you're doing an information systems audit, you can review the user access controls. You can analyze the access rights which have been granted. You can also review the web logs, and you can review the audit trials. There are various types of tests which can be performed for the perspective of IS audit. Let's say you're auditing purchases. Now this just gives you a sample list of what are the different types of tests you can perform. The company has got a credit policy where they say if the purchases are made, we are going to make the payments within a specific period, or we would like to see that the orders are accumulated and they are ordered, or we buy only from authorized vendors. You can actually do this analysis using CAATs. Similarly, you have discount policy. You can also look at the standard prices and find out what are the prices, what are the items which have been purchased, and whether these are within the normal range or beyond, or whether these are inflated. Similarly, fraud in payroll, you can check whether there are any ghost employees. You can also analyze the data based on the work location. You can also perform aging. Let me come to the Benford law before I go to the demo. Benford was a statistician who was working in the Department of Defense in the US. So while doing the analysis of the logarithm tables, he found initially the first few pages were worn out much more. Based on this, he formulated a hypothesis and he tested, and then came to the conclusion that if you take any random population which is not controlled, for example, let's say the sales which happen in a supermarket, or the deposits or withdrawals in a bank, or the age of population, like that, if you pick up any random population which is not controlled, which means you are not giving the specific number, you are not put any boundaries for that number. If you pick up a random population and you run the Benford test, any number will fall within the range of 1 to 9. The 0 which comes in the beginning is ignored. So if you take up these numbers which are between 1 to 9, the possibility that in this random population, which is quite huge, the probability that the digits start with 1, the number start with 1 is 30.1%. If you look at statistically, on the average, it should be 11%. But as per the Benford law, which has been proven, you pick up a random population, the probability that particular population start with 1, the leading digit is 1, is 30.1. The possibility that it start with 2, for example, you purchase this. Okay, what is the purchase about 2, which start with 2, which is 20,000, 21,000, 23,500, anything for that starting with 2, the probability is 17.6%. The probability start with 9 is 4.6%. Now, where is this useful? This is very useful in identifying patterns of data. For example, if somebody has committed a fraud, now without knowing the Benford law, he would have done the fraud by doing transactions pertaining to 9. Let's say the limit of the company is 10,000 rupees. So there are a lot of transactions which are done with 9,000 rupees or 9,500 rupees or 8,500 rupees. So if the person has committed a fraud, you'll find there will be abnormal spike in transactions starting with 9. Now, based on this information, based on this indicator, you can do further analysis. Now, to summarize, as I said, data analytics is both about the science and art. The science is available and has drastically improved. What is important is for the auditors to improve their analytical skills by applying it on the data. The software, the CAATs, can pick up any information you want, but it's for the auditor to formulate a judgment and do specific analysis as required. So the key question you need to ask is, are you ready to move from the ticks, which was the older era of audit, to the clicks? And that's why they say CAATs are the audit tools for the digital decade or the E era. Wherever there's a mouse, there has to be a CAAT. With this, let me summarize and say CAATs refer to computer-assisted audit techniques or tools. These are very important tools which can be used by the auditors for any type of audit. What is fundamentally important for the auditor is to understand what is the format in which the data is available, extract this data. You can even use Excel or you can use an audit software, and you can do analysis as required based on the audit objectives. Now, let me give you a quick walkthrough of the features of an audit software and how to use it. Let's look at one example of the audit software which is being taught in the institute. The audit software, which is the demo version of IDEA. IDEA is one of the tools. Similarly, I said there are various other tools. Now, if you look at this interface, I said it's important to remember that the audit software or CAAT has the look and feel of Excel, but the power of a database. But there are some key differences. One of the key differences is that you import the data or you extract the data and you get access to the data in the format in which the data can be read by the audit software. Okay. For this purpose of demo, I have kept some sample files which are already available in the IDEA. For example, in your material also, you'll find most of the sample files which are used for the exercises are already available in the sample directory which is there in IDEA. So you can use this for the purpose of doing the analysis. What I suggest when you do this analysis is don't restrict yourself to that 80 or 20 functions to the sample data. You create your own sample data and do further analysis. You assume you're doing the audit, you create some sample data pertaining to, let's say, cash transactions, pertaining to purchases and sales, and do analysis. There are also a CD which is available, which is using CAATs for the purpose of audit. I suggest you get access to the CD. There are a lot of sample case studies which are available. We can use that. So let me give you a quick walkthrough of the key features of the audit software, specifically from the perspective of the software which is being shown here, which is being taught in the institute. If you know one audit software, it's like knowing any other software. It's like driving. If you know how to drive a Maruti car, you can also drive other cars. It could be a Ford or it could be any other car. Because 80 to 90% of the features which are available in IDEA are available in ACL also, are available in TopCAT also, or in SoftCAT also. Most of the common features, like I told you, that 80 or 20 functions which are there, or 40 to 50 functions which are there, which are mostly used, are available in most of the audit software. If you look at the menu, you find this has similar interface to what is available in Excel. You have the file menu. This is where you have the import assistant, where you can import the data. Like I said, you can import the data from whether that particular data is available in a text format, whether in DBS format, Lotus format. There are different types of formats are available. You can import the data, and then once you import the data is available. The key distinction between Excel and audit software is, in the audit software, you cannot modify the data. Okay, you can manipulate the data, you can create a separate column, you can do a lot of extraction, filtering, etc. But you always do it with a copy of the data. Okay, so it means you cannot enter any data directly in this particular cell or row. Okay, although you can delete a row, you can delete a column, etc. Now let's look at some of the important functions. If you just have walkthrough, you'll find you have this file function which has got various things. We can. I'm not going to cover all these key functions because some of these are not covered in your syllabus also. But just to give a perspective, project overview is just like an assignment. You create a project in which you store the files. You open the database. You can also delete the database once you've done the audit. You have made a copy and you'd like to delete. You also have visual connector, which you can use it for the purpose of relating the information. You can join databases, like I said, the employee master with the transaction of the payroll, and you can connect both of these and do the analysis. You can also append data. For example, let us say you got salary of 12 months. You would like to consolidate all the salary and compute the annual salary. You can append all the transaction files of all the 12 months and then do the analysis. You can also compare two files. For example, you got the salary of April and you got the salary of May. You'd like to make a comparison, find what is the difference of salary between April and May. Okay, you can also export the data. Now let's come to specific functions. Rerun is another important thing which is there, which means if you performed a specific task and you have recorded that macro, you can also rerun that particular task. View, these are quite simple. You don't have much to explain as far as view is concerned. Data. Now if you look at three key functions which are there, three key menus which are there in any audit software, these are pertaining to data, analysis and sampling. Out of these three also, the data analysis are the menus which are most important for you, and for the purpose of the training also you find most of the functions are from the data and analysis. I'll not be able to go through all the functions, but I'll give you a quick walkthrough of some of the features. Extraction, as I said, you can extract information. Let me just give you an example. Now here I got a file. Just look at this particular file. Now this is a file which is not there in your sample data. I've actually imported this file for the purpose of the test. Let me give you an overview of how to do the analysis. Now if you look at the screen, you have this menus which are given, and each of this menu has specific functionality. Okay. Once you imported the data, the first thing you do is to profile the data. Okay, which means you'll understand whether the data you imported is correct. This is where you use the function called field statistics. When you click on this field statistics, it says statistics are not available for all the fields. Do you wish to create statistics for all the fields without statistics? I say yes. Now just look at this. What's happening here? It is giving me the data pertaining to the numeric statistics. Now just by looking at this information, can you find out are there any issues? You get the net value, you get the absolute value, you find the number of records, you have the number of positive records, you also get the number of negative records, number of data errors if it is at the time of importing. You also get the number of records, which is the minimum number, which is the record which has got the minimum value, which is the number which has got the maximum value. You also have standard deviation, variance, etc. Because this is a demo version, it can only provide information pertaining to 1000 records. Otherwise, in the regular version, there is no limit as far as the records is concerned. So the first thing you do when you get the data is to compute the statistics and check whether the total information is correct. For example, let's say you imported the data pertaining to sales. So once you imported the data pertaining to sales, you compute the field statistics to check whether the total sales which you imported is matching with the sales in the general ledger. Similarly, in terms of number of transactions, also you can verify. Now let's do a quick analysis. One of the functions which is available is sort. Now if you just do a double click, you'll find you'll be able to sort this data. Okay, you've got only 1000 records here. Now when you double sort, it does in ascending or descending order. Now just observe closely on the top two. What do you find here? You find top two rows are blank, which means in this particular case there are sales where the name of the party is not available for two transactions. Okay. Similarly, let's look at the sales When look at the sales, you find that there are no information, there are no missing information. Most of the information is available. Now I would like to know what is the total of the sales. When I click on the control total and I say sales, you find I'll get the total sales here. Okay. I can also apply the criteria, which means I would like to pick up sales above 50,000 rupees or above 1 lakh rupees. I can get that information. Okay. Similarly, let's say I'm doing a sorting based on date. I get that the first transaction is from 1st April 2011. Similarly, the last transaction is from 31/3/2012. Just by the simple function of sort, I performed what is called as the cutoff concept. What is the cutoff concept? All the transactions which are recorded are for the financial year. In this case, I know the opening of the year is 1st April, and the closing of the year is 31st March, and the transactions which are imported are falling within that particular range only. Okay, now let's go to certain specific functions. So this just to show you that in the case of data analysis software, let's look at one more field, which is the invoice number. We got the invoice number which starts from 1006. Now just by double clicking, I'm finding that the maximum invoice number is 7664 and the minimum number is 1006. Based on this, what can I infer? The starting invoice number for the company was 1006. The ending number was 7664. So I can verify in that particular company's records and find out whether this is the invoice number which have been issued during the year. The starting invoice on 1st April was 1006. The ending invoice on 31st March was 7664. So you find just by extracting the information, doing a profiling of the data, getting an understanding of statistics, and doing the sorting function, I'm able to cover quite a few of these functions, quite a few of the tests which I need to perform. Okay, now let's perform the sorting based on the user ID. What do you find here? For every transaction, there has to be user ID, and I find there's one transaction for which the user ID is missing. Similarly, I can sort based on the name. We've already done this. So just by double clicking, you can sort in ascending or descending order. Now let's go to specific functions. Let me pick up the analysis. Now let me do first the stratification. I do the stratification. What do I want to stratify with? Stratify based on the sales. Okay, I want to give the limit. I want to find out transactions from 500 to 10,500, 10,500 to 20,500, 20,500 to 30,500. Okay, now automatically IDEA will take care of all this. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm getting the information based on the buckets. Okay, now I've got this particular strata. What is the field I want to total? Sales. I click OK. Now IDEA gives you this information. What can you infer from this? The transactions which are between 500 to 10,500, the number of records is 515. Okay, and the total value is 22,38,110. It also gives you the percentage. Okay, the transactions which are between 10,500 to 20,500, the number of transactions is 121. Okay, similarly, if you go down, the transactions between 1 lakh to 1,10,000 is number 2, and this gives you the percentage. Now, I would like to look at transactions which are above this 1 lakh limit. Let's say I have this information. I double click on this. Okay, extract the records. Now it gives me a list of all the records which are above that 1 lakh rupees. This is what is called the drill down, which you must be knowing quite well in Tally. So you can drill down and get this information. Now by a simple click, I have been able to stratify that information. Okay, now let's come back to this. Okay, let's take up summer function. Stratification you're done. Let's look at summarization. I want to summarize based on the name and total the sales. I'll use a quick summarization. Now what do you see here? At the top, you find there are two transactions. You remember we saw in sorting itself, there are two transactions which do not have the name. Then you have for each of the parties, I've got the transaction, the number of transactions, and the total value. Now just see, there are about 6,000 transactions in this. If there are 6 billion transactions also of the particular company or the bank, I would like to extract the statement of account and verify one particular statement. I just run the summarize or classify function. Based on this, I can extract the statement of account of a particular party, and I can do 100% posting verification by just running this particular function. And this is what is possible. This is the power of the audit software. Let me give you a demo of one more function. We have the duplicate key, which means I would like to identify, are there any duplicates on the invoice number. Let me select the key. I want to identify based on the invoice number. So what do I see here? You find invoice number 5500, 5500, these are duplicates. Now if you see, just by clicking a few buttons, I have been able to find out what are the invoices which are duplicates. There are many more duplicates, but because it's a demo version, it's able to process only 1000 transactions. So by performing the duplicate test, I can know all the transactions which are duplicate. Let's pick up one more example here. Now if you see here, we have the sample authorization. Let me see what transaction I can see. Okay, there's a transaction ID, type, date, amount. Okay, now if I want to see are there any negative transactions, let's say I've extracted the data's balances, I'd like to see are there any credit balance in this. How do I find this? I just double click, all the credit balance will come on the top. I would like to extract all these credit balances. I can give the criteria, balances which are negative, and I can extract this information. Let me show you a few more functions. We have something called the gap detection. Now gap, you remember, we are talking about transactions. Are there any gap between the invoices? Because we know invoices should be in a serial order. So what do you find here? Between 1007 to 1015, there are 9 gaps. 1017 to 1017, one invoice number is missing. So it gives me a list of all the transactions where there are gaps. So it means at one shot, I'm able to find out what are the gaps in these invoices. What can I make out from this? Now these invoices it could be possible that these invoices could have been cancelled, or there could be some other reason for this particular data not being available in a sequential order. So you can use the gap test to find out are there any gap in the invoices. For example, you have transactions. Every transaction should have a transaction ID. You can use the gap test to find out are there any gap in the transactions. Similarly, sampling. So you have systematic sampling where you can go and select, you identify number of records to select. Let's say I would like to pick up 10 records on random out of the total number available. Starting record number. Okay. So here what we have got is, we have not selected the sample, we have got everything. So you can specify the number of transactions you want, and based on that you can pick up that specific number of transactions. Similarly, you can pick up random. You can also do what is called a stratified random sampling. Now in the case of stratified random sampling, you remember we earlier talked about stratification. We stratify the data based on a particular category, and then you can give samples saying, okay, all transactions between 10,000 to 50,000 I'd like to pick up 5. Transactions between 50,000 to 1 lakh I would like to pick up 3. So you can specify the number of samples you would like to pick up between that particular strata, and the software will pick up this information and provide this to you. Let me run the Benford law, because this is one thing which is interesting. If you remember, I would like to do the Benford law not on the invoice number. Why? Because the invoice number is controlled. I would like to do the Benford analysis on the sales. Okay. There are multiple Benford laws applicable. You can do it on the first digit, second digit, third digit, etc. I would like to just do it on the first digit. Initially, when the Benford law started, it was only for the first digit, but now it's available for multiple digits. Now let me see the result and then explain to you. Now based on the Benford law analysis, you find the first digit expected is 300.73. It also gives you the low bound or the high bound and the actual and the differences. Based on this, you'll be able to find out what are the patterns of the data, and then you can see where could be the problems. Based on the Benford result you got, for example, you would like to do further analysis, you can go and pick up that information and do further analysis. Let's have a walkthrough of some other function. You also have what is called as define action field. I'll not be showing this, but just to say that you can store what the result you want from after performing a particular function, and you can get the result and run this whenever you want. You can also group the records. You can also manipulate the data in the way you want. For example, you would like to modify the characteristics of the data, you can modify the characteristics, but you should remember that the original data will be retained, but you will be able to work, you will be modifying this on a copy of the data. Let's come back to our original file. This is what you got. Okay, now the same functions which are available here are also given here. You got a visual connector. Visual connector is where you can connect two files, two related files. You can establish the relationship. You got join database, where I said you can merge the database or join two related files. You can also append the databases. You can also create a report based on what you want. You can publish whatever analysis you've done. You can publish in a PDF format. You can put in a Word format. You can also print the report. You also have various utility functions which are available. You have the duplicate key detection, gap detection. You can also extract data depending, like I said, you'd like to pick up all transactions. Let's say, let's do the direct extraction. I'd like to pick up all transactions, and the criteria I'd like to give greater than or equal to 50,000. Okay, I need to select the field. Based on that, I should be able to give this information. Okay, let's leave this. You also have pivot table, which is similar to what is there in Excel. Aging, let's do the aging and just check. Now aging, you got, it gives the date. The issue in this particular sample data is because it's able to process only 1,000 data and I've got 6,000 records, I'm not able to get the correct results. But I just want to give you an idea of how IDEA works. Let's summarize our understanding. As far as you're concerned, for the purpose of your teaching, you have about 20 functions which are covered. One is you should be able to import an Excel file, an Access file, or a text file. You can also do statistics, which are shown to you. You can also, using statistics, you can profile the data. You can do sampling, different types of sampling. There are also advanced sampling techniques like monetary unit sampling, variable sampling, which are covered in IDEA, but there's not in there in your syllabus. You have stratification, where you can stratify the data based on a particular category. You can do sorting. Sorting is a very simple but a very, very powerful function. You can do a duplicate test. Duplicate is defined based on duplicate invoices, duplicate customer ID, duplicate vendor. Any duplicate you can identify easily by click of certain buttons. You can also do gap test. You can do an aging analysis. For example, you're doing aging analysis of data or aging analysis of inventory. You can extract specific information based on your requirement. For example, you're doing a purchase vouching and you'd like to pick up all transactions of purchases above 10 lakh rupees. You can extract that specific information. Or let's say you're doing audit of a bank fixed deposit, you'd like to pick up all fixed deposits above 10 lakh rupees. You can pick up that information. You can do further recomputation of the TDS which has been done to check whether TDS has been correctly computed. You can apply the Benford law to a random population and identify abnormalities in the pattern which has been given. We can consolidate or merge the data from different areas. Merge would mean that you can add columns from two different files. You can also append the files. You can also use the equation editor. Equation editor is similar to what you got as functions in Excel. It has about 70 or 80 functions which are commonly used. For example, one of the function is day of the week. Now using day of the week on the date function, you can pick up information pertaining to all the transactions which happened on a specific day. Using this, you can find out all the transactions which have happened on a Sunday or on a Monday. You can also generate reports. These reports are very, very simple. Whatever analysis you've done, you can extract the report and print it in the form which you want, like in Word or PDF, or in the format of IDEA itself. You can also do field manipulation. Field manipulation is where you take specific fields and recompute. For example, there is a VAT which has been charged at a particular rate. I would like to verify whether the VAT has been correctly computed. So what I do is I'll create a new field called computed VAT. I'll apply that particular rate, and once I computed that VAT, I'll verify with the actual VAT which has been taken by the company and then see if there's any difference. Similarly, if TDS has been computed, TDS has been deducted, I'll create a separate field and compute the TDS and then verify with the actual TDS to identify the variances. These are some of the examples of how audit software could be used. To sum up, I would like to say that audit software has a look and feel of Excel, but the power of a database. For using audit software, the first thing you need to drop is your apprehension that this is very complex. Audit software is in fact one of the most simplest software to use. In fact, jokingly I say that you should know how to select, then you have to know how to click next, and then OK. Many of the functions which are there, depending on the criteria which you're using, require you to select a particular information and click based on the specific criteria, and you click OK, you get the result. The audit software runs very quickly and gives you the result, but that's only the part of science. What is important for you is to analyze this information, and that's where your skills comes in. That's where your knowledge of business domain expertise or subject matter expertise comes in. So using audit software in terms of learnability will not take much time. What is important is for you to use this with some practical examples. For example, you are auditing sales, or you are auditing purchases, you are auditing debtors or creditors. Pick up that particular data, identify what is that you would like to test, and check whether that is being complied with. Okay, when you start using it, you'll find the beauty of the audit software is you can do 100% audit in a fraction of minutes, whereas manually it's going to be very, very difficult. To sum up, using audit software or learning audit software is not very difficult, but you need to invest certain time. There are also resources which are made available by the vendor who's supplying the software. For example, when you install the idea software, you'll also find there is a tutorial which is given with some sample exercises. There are also a tutorial directory which all the sample files are available. So what I would like to suggest is just read the tutorial, which is about 67 pages, have a quick look at it. It explains to you step by step how you can use different functions. There's also sample data available. Perform these functions, and then you'll be able to keep learning. So overall, if you look at the key features in audit software, there could be about 100 plus functions in the audit software. The most common functions which are used are around 20 plus. Now, if you know this 20 plus functions, it may take about 3 to 4 hours to learn. You can definitely be a much more effective auditor. So thank you very much. I hope this particular session was useful. What is the best way to learn data analytics software? The best way to learn any data analytics software or any software for that matter is by doing it. Learning audit software is a skill. It's not a knowledge. It's not about reading the books. It's about practicing. If you go through the material with around 60 plus pages and you perform the test one by one, so probably it will take you only 3 to 4 hours for you to perform all the functions. What is important is not that you perform the functions, but to apply your judgment, look at different scenarios. So you should go beyond what is covered in the classroom by doing some practical case studies, picking up the examples which are available, and then learn much more than what is given in the study material. For most of the international auditors, let's say you join MNC or a Big Four firm or some big well-known firm, you'll find one of the first things you'll get is the laptop. Along with the laptop, you'll also get some software. And as a part of the software, you'll have this MS Office. And with MS Office, you're also given an audit software. You also could be probably given training also. So if you know how to use CAAT, probably your productivity could be enhanced by more than 10 times. And that's what I've seen practically. For example, one of the cases, we're doing a fraud investigation where this company had done analysis manually to identify the fraud. They had spent more than 2 man-months with a 6-member team, which is 12 man-months. Whereas when they asked us to do the overall confirmation whether what they've got is right, we're able to do this analysis just by using audit software, and we're able to finish within 12 to 20 days. What they took 12 man-months, we're able to do the analysis and confirm and provide a better assurance to management in just 12 to 20 days. That's the power of the audit software. So my suggestion to you is drop the apprehension, just start exploring. You will not cause any damage or loss to the computer. Just start using this one functions one by one. Start exploring, playing around with sample data, and then you should be able to get to know how to use the audit software. The more you start using it, the more you'll start learning it. Okay. I have a question. Do you think the ITD faculty, considering their background, probably they are from an engineering background, can they teach CAAT? Yes, they can. Because if you remember the perspective, what is important is analysis. CAAT is one of the most important tools which is used in fraud and forensic investigation. And the people who do fraud and forensic investigation are not only auditors. It is done even by the people who are from a scientific background. You also have a special field called as digital forensics, where you actually investigate the data which is stored in bits and bytes in the computer. There also CAAT is used for analysis of data. So even if you are from a scientific IT background or a science background, you can still learn CAATs. What is important is to supplement your business domain knowledge or expertise. So you should know what is the business process rules. All the branches would have got a copy of the IDEA software, which is the demo version. If you've not got it, I think you should be able to get this copy. What I suggest is just spend time, install the software. It will take only about 10 minutes for you to install the software, and then you can walk through the features. Also read the tutorial which is available in the directory, the IDEA tutorial, which gives you very good examples of how you can use IDEA software. And I also suggest that you also have an expert faculty, it could be a chartered accountant, who can come and give you the practical perspective. And then you can formulate your own data, use the data which is available. As I said, you also have this CAAT, using CAAT and GAS, which is a separate CD which is available. You can also start learning from that. So this session, the objective was to give you a quick overview. My perspective was that you should be able to bring a change in your thinking in terms of how to approach audit software or CAATs. So in using CAATs, it's not about the complexity of the audit software. It's about having the understanding to use audit tool for the purpose of audit. So if you find a particular purpose, and if you can get the data, you can definitely do the analysis. So thank you very much. It was a great learning experience for me. I hope this session provided you some insights. And you remember I said CAATs is all about inferring insights. Now we have given you some ideas how you to get started. Now you need to get started and start exploring. The more you start exploring, the more you start learning. Now if you're teaching Excel, if you're teaching Access, you can also teach CAAT software. What is important is to bring that business dimension or the business perspective. Thank you very much. We hope to see you in the near future. Bye.